Kick his ass, Summer! This week's Rick and Morty was all about the S-Slice, baby. And I'm so stoked to talk about our first summer-heavy episode this season. This ep has tons of Easter eggs and details that you might have missed. And this is our breakdown of Wet Kuat Amortican Summer. This is your spoiler warning! If you haven't seen Season 7, Episode 7 of Rick and Morty yet, hit pause on this video and come back when you form a psychic link with your Kuato. This week's episode title, Wet Kuat Amortican Summer, is a play on both of the movies Wet Hot American Summer and Total Recall. If you haven't seen Detective Elliot Stabler hump a fridge in a flag bandana, you truly haven't lived. Wet Hot American Summer is probably the most honest portrayal of camp counselor life besides Salute Your Shorts. Total Recall has been parodied in a title before, back in Season 2's Total Recall. But this week, we're focusing primarily on the Kuato aspect of that film. I guess the writers have been on a Schwarzenegger kick lately, because this is the second Kuato we've seen this season. Rick Prime also had one in Unmortricken. I'm wondering if Rick Prime used similar tech to what we see in this episode to fuse another Rick variant to himself in his pursuit for powers and upgrades. Interestingly, this is also the first episode title ever that we've gotten that includes Summer's name. The rest of the Smith-Sanchez family has had at least one or two episode titles centering around them, but this is Sum's first. The story opens with Summer performing a list of her grandfather's most intensive chores, hoping to score a new gadget from him in return for her servitude. Rick is smart enough to know not to give anything away for free, and Summer is smart enough to know that she has to work hard to prove herself to Grandpa. Basically, Summer's a bad bitch. Even though she's stuck spending her afternoon washing alien guts off Rick's space cruiser, banishing curses in the sub-basement, mopping up the Mindblower lab, and butchering alien bodies in the backyard. Rick comments that she's already earned an upgraded ponytail and ghost goggles in the recent past, so this ain't her first rodeo. Summer has her eyes on the big prize this time, an attribute slider that's a lot like the Pip-Boy from Fallout because it allows you to similarly adjust your strength, dexterity, charisma, and intelligence levels. Except a Pip-Boy looks a lot less painful. Summer plans to use her new bracelet to hook up with Jimmy Haddocker, the captain of Harry Herpson High School's Frisbee golf team. In the post-credits scene of Rick fending your Mort, Jimmy invites Morty to his frolf mixer. It's interesting how serialized this season is in the teeniest of ways. Rick and Summer argue that Morty hasn't done anything to earn an attribute slider, and honestly, they do kind of have a point. Although Morty was the one who pulled Rick out of his drunken garage post-prime slump, he needs to be rescued a lot more than he does the rescuing. This episode shines a light on the unique relationships that both Morty and Summer have with their grandpa and each other. Morty tries to argue that helping Rick defeat his greatest nemesis should score him an attribute slider of his own, and Summer responds, "Oh, you guys found him?" She didn't even realize that Rick had murdered Rick Prime with his bare fists in retaliation for blipping his wife out of every universe, let alone the fact that he'd been in a borderline catatonic state for weeks after. This dude lost his entire purpose, the series lost its biggest villain, and Summer had no idea. Morty and Summer's dynamic is also established in this scene, with Morty begging Summer to share the bracelet with him like a typical younger brother. But when he tells her that he needs her help to look cool at the frolf party too, Summer tells him that he's a needy scrap chaser while she hunts and kills what she eats. She and Rick rarely express that they see Morty's value, and this is one of the many times that they've discredited the role he plays in Rick's adventures. I know I said I was kind of on their side because of the fact that Rick has to rescue Morty fairly frequently, but that doesn't mean that Morty is useless. Without him, Rick would have absolutely died at the beginning of Mort Dinner Rick Andre, and he definitely would have drowned in a combination of warm garage beer and his own spit last episode if Morty hadn't pulled him out of his funk. Regardless of the many times that Morty has contributed to saving the day, Summer still views him as an annoying little brother, and carries the weight that all older sisters carry in trying to simultaneously protect and prepare him for growing up. Once her attributes are successfully adjusted, Summer instantly gets ripped, calls Rick a nerd, and lifts him over her head. This is obviously the scene we saw in the opening credits where the attribute slider is clearly visible. At Jimmy's frolf party, the teens have decorated the whole house in a Frisbee golf theme, including a flag banner that reads frolf, a banner and a poster that both say "May the course be with you," a nod to Star Wars, Jimmy's frolf captain plaque, a frolf course cake, and an ultimate snacks table, a reference to Ultimate Frisbee. Summer uses the slider to make herself more dexterous and charismatic to impress Jimmy and Brad, the latter of which plays frolf in the football offseason. Morty manages to get his hands on the bracelet and uses it to beef himself up in front of Summer's friends like Trish and Nancy, who are also at the party. Great. I just hired a night person to get abs for me, and now there's an easier way? Ugh. Wrestling over the attribute slider, Summer and Morty fall into the drink and accidentally create an electrified gene pool in Jimmy's backyard. The bracelet causes Morty and Summer to fuse together, transforming Morty into a Kuato that protrudes from his sister's abdomen. Rick later explains that the gene sequencer actually braided their spines together, and that it'll be extremely difficult to untangle them. During the post-show inside the episode, Dan Harmon noted that he wanted this episode to feel like a more extreme version of getting handcuffed to your sibling. And obviously, he's right. Prior to their accident, Summer already figuratively viewed Morty as a parasitic leech, and now he's physically strapped to her body like a talking tumor. The only words that Morty's able to communicate are "open your mind," a line that Kuato speaks to Arnold in Total Recall. Back home, Rick is watching Cake or Fake, a parody of the Mikey Day hosted Netflix series Is It Cake? Obviously, people on the internet were tricking people with realistic-looking cakes long before that reality show came out, but here, it's definitely making fun of Netflix. He tells Summer that he'll only help her fix her Morty Kuato if she does more chores for him, like feeding six-legged rats to Rick's carnivorous plants in one of his sub-basement labs. While scrolling through her phone, Summer realizes that everyone at the party is making fun of her or creating memes about her, including her friend Trish, who goes by the screen name Trishy Queen. But that's not all she sees. She's also served with a targeted ad for a new hot Kuato club that just opened called Mind Openers, and immediately decides to head on over there without considering the risks. When Summer meets the cute girl she saves later on in the episode, she's greeted with the phrase "oh my glob" regarding her Kuato. Adventure Time fans will recognize this as Lumpy Space Princess's way of saying "oh my god," because of the four-headed deity Grob Gob Glob Grob. But before their bisexual romance can blossom, Summer's hit on by a trafficker named Quiet and his Kuato Godiva. You can even see him staring at her creepily in the background of the bar before he makes his move. Quiet introduces Summer to Kenneth, a Jesus-looking cult leader in charge of Kuato VIPs. But as they're leaving the club, he has her kidnapped by a group of cyborg dudes in a windowless 70s van. From there, she's moved to a Taken house where she's separated from Morty and left to die in a blazing furnace. Luckily, Rick installed those ponytail upgrades, and her hair's Inspector Gadget-esque tech manages to free her. Rick goes to his sub-basement to check on Summer, but he can't find her. I, however, found some pretty fun Easter eggs in the Mind Blower lab when Rick peeks his head in. We've got memories labeled Fear of, Pocket Poo, Time, Balls, Virginity, Micro-Tit, and LOL. My favorite beaker, however, reads Stanford, a nod to Ford Pines from Gravity Falls, a Disney cartoon that shares a multiverse with Rick and Morty. We first saw this tube back in Season 3's initial Morty's Mind Blower episode, along with another tube labeled B Cipher for Bill Cipher from Gravity Falls. There are a ton of Easter eggs in both shows because Alex Hirsch, creator of Gravity Falls, used to be good buddies with Justin Roiland back in the day. Journal 3, which is canonically identical IRL to its animated counterpart in GF, even features silhouettes of a Plumbus from Rick and Morty's Season 2 interdimensional cable episode, a Zygerianon from Season 1's M. Night Shyamalan's, and the flying Cthulhu monster from the opening credits. When Rick opened a portal dimension in Season 1's Closer Encounters of the Rick Kind, a question mark mug, a pen, and a hat fell out. It's revealed in the post-credits scene of the Gravity Falls episode The Society of the Blind Eye that Grunkle Stan's portal sucked in those exact 3 items. We've got so many more Easter eggs between the two shows than the examples I just listed, so the rest of them probably deserve their own full breakdown video. But you get the point. Gravity Falls and Rick and Morty are arguably canonically connected via the multiverse. Oh, and just in case you're wondering, yes, this does mean that the Owl House is also technically connected to Rick and Morty, because it was implied that Ida the Owl Lady canonically dated Stan Pines, which honestly makes me a little annoyed. Where was Rick when Luz was struggling with portals and time travel? Over at the Taken house, Morty is all hooked up to machines and fluids after his separation from Summer. No idea how these unlicensed doctors disentangled their spines so easily, but whatever. In a further Taken homage, these scientists are trafficking Kuatos to VIPs for exorbitant prices. Peep the numbers on the door to Morty's torture chamber. He's in room 237, a nod to the famous hotel room at the Overlook in The Shining. While Rick is kicking ass first and asking questions later, you can see a sign for a chop shop in the background that reads Choppity Shoppity. It turns out that Summer didn't really need a ton of her grandpa's help. She managed to catch Quiet the Trafficker on her own steam. But the one thing that she overlooked was the psychic connection she could have had to Morty the entire time. Little dude has been groaning, "Open your mind!" explained for hours, but because she hasn't seen Total Recall, she doesn't understand that he's trying to communicate with her telepathically. Look, Summer, I get it. You successfully pulled off doing a Die Hard without ever seeing Die Hard. It makes sense that you thought you could do a Total Recall without consulting the source material too. Summer uses Eleven's all-black in-between realm from Stranger Things to communicate with her little brother, and finds out where Kenneth's goons are holding him. Rick tries to kick down all the doors in the Taken house like Liam Neeson, but he fails because he's still getting his groove back after his Rick Prime depression. But despite kicking ass side by side with her grandfather, Summer still feels the immense weight of being an older sibling and asks why Rick seemingly gives him anything he wants without trying. Rick explains to her that Morty is more like a dog and she's more like a cat. Dogs are easier to tame and boss around, but getting to know a cat requires mutual respect and reverence. He doesn't save Morty 7 times a season for nothing. Morty's adventures usually demand a rescue or a redo by the end, but Summer is capable of holding her own and saving herself. In fact, Rick discusses this with his garage AI on his home planet back in Solarix. When Diane's haunting voice asks him if Summer is a girl he's seeing, Rick responds that she's actually their granddaughter, and that she's gonna be the one who saves him in this situation. He can count on Summer in a way that he can't count on his grandson, which is why he treats Summer like an equal instead of her elder. After telling AI Diane about their first grandchild, Rick wistfully tells her that Summer actually reminds him a lot of her, which is very interesting because we've never seen Diane's full characterization before. In Rick's flashbacks, we only see Diane as a loving wife and mother, but knowing that Summer takes after her hints that there was a lot more to his late spouse than the surface level descriptions we've been given of her. Prior to their dastardly run-in with Rick Prime, Rick seemed a lot less cynical and was obviously far less aware of the dangers of portal travel. After Diane was wiped from the multiverse, Rick began adventure hopping throughout time and space to find her killer. But before that, he was just a husband tinkering away in the garage. Based on everything we do know about Rick and all of the characteristics we know about Summer, I have a theory that Diane was the adventurous one in their relationship, and that her death prompted Rick to become the person he is today. For all we know, our Rick would have been perfectly happy spending the rest of his life as a hobby scientist and devoted father. I think he may have started adventuring in part to honor her memory, to experience all the things she never would on her behalf. Obviously, his main motivation was killing Rick Prime, but I also believe that his resentment and revenge was the only way to distract himself from the pain of losing her. Dude started icing Ricks across the galaxy to feel like he avenged her memory and became a borderline alcoholic to cope with the decades he failed to do so. And this is where Summer comes in. It's no secret that after years of murder and drunken debauchery, Rick has slowly been healing his fractured relationships with his family since crash landing into the Smiths' lives. And that's because he finally feels reconnected to everything he's lost. Beth reminds him what it's like to be an actual parent again, and Morty is the little buddy he always wanted to spend his previously solo adventures with. But Summer is the real icing on the cake because she reminds him so much of Diane. Although he'll never be able to replace the wife he lost, he still sees parts of her living on in the granddaughter she never got to meet. Summer has bad bitch energy that I think his wife also had. Perhaps, like Summer, Diane was also fearless in the face of a harrowing quest and worked hard to gain the respect of others. In the same way that Rick respects Summer for her uncanny ability to rescue him and herself, I think that Rick also trusted Diane to take care of business and their family. Although, I gotta say, Rick's implanted inflatable butt pillow was a genius way to save Summer this time. And let's not forget the cybernetic ponytail trick he installed. I firmly believe that this design was inspired by the Snack Time Cabbage Patch doll that swallowed several little girls' hair back in the 90s. Those were absolutely vicious, bro. This doll literally scalped several kindergartners in 1996, which is why they obviously discontinued the toy a few bloody incidents later. Rick encourages Summer to telepathically connect with Morty, and when she does, they actually start working together as a team. I think that this is the moment that changes the way Summer has felt about her little brother the entire episode. She realizes that she needs Morty just as much as he needs her, and that he isn't useless or needy like she thought. Morty single-handedly disarms a Taken/Squid Game goon and Kawato number 3 by biting them. And Rick uses a remote control to connect to the spider robot chair, throwing the Kawato on the Kawato on the Kawato off the side of the boat. Summer also realizes that Kawato Morty can use the spider chair to help the team win a big frolf game. And even though he accidentally exploded the field with the robot's missile feature, it's safe to say that both siblings succeeded at getting the hot popular teens to notice them. In the post-credits scene, a bunch of rich guys in animal masks parody the wealthy bidders from Squid Game, with one dude bragging that he paid 69 million florbos for Kuat Morty, proving yet again that Rick's little buddy has value, monetarily and as a grandson's sidekick and brother. These are all the Easter eggs that I could find in Wet Kuat Amortican Summer, but I want to know if I missed anything in the comments. Like and subscribe to WhitneyVision, open your mind, and be sure to check out my new podcast, Guardians of the Galaxy with Tommy Bechtold and MT. I'm Scarlet Wit, and you're watching WhitneyVision.